This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
This is the X-Zone Radio TV show with Rob McConnell on the X-Zone Broadcast Network and our worldwide family of broadcast affiliates. If you have a question for Rob McConnell or his guest, or if you've had a paranormal experience, call toll-free 1-800-610-7035 extension 0 or email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, our one address is X-Zone Radio TV.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
All my friends know the low rider. The low rider is a little higher.
Welcome back, everybody. I've got a question for the world. How come we can put space vehicles on the moon, Mars? We can do so many wondrous things, yet we can't find a cure for the common cold. What in the name of heavens is all this about? Here I am. It's January the 7th, and I've still got this blooming cold that I got before Christmas. Here's the real ironic part. I got my flu shot. I got my pneumonia shot now. Ooh, I've reached that age. And I've got a cold. My wife, who's a nurse, she just finished this horrific cold. I don't know. If you have any ideas, send me an email. xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. I'm going to ask Dr. Joe Marrow this question when he's on with us later this week. It's one of those days. We've got another ice storm coming. Tens of thousands of people in Canada and the United States are still without power. And Mother Nature is saying, hey, you want to screw with me? I'll show you what screwing you is all about. Here comes the ice. The Iceman cometh. Makes me want to watch that movie, The Ice Age. You know, with a sloth? I'm a sloth. Yeah. 1-800-610-7035, worldwide toll-free. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com on MSN Messenger and all the other social networks that are now available. One very simple address, X-Zone Radio TV, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. Here's my second question for you this hour, X-Zone Nation. What happens when a confirmed skeptic marries a gifted psychic? I bet you're saying, well, what does happen, Rob? My guest this hour is Louisa Oakley Green, and when she was looking for a husband more than 20 years ago, the last thing on her list of must-haves was someone with gifted psychic ability. Now, a writer who spent most of her career writing about science, she thought the supernatural was just nonsense. 20 years later, she's changed her mind. And we're going to ask her why, and we're going to find out why. And first of all, Louisa Oakley Green, welcome to the X-Zone, and to you and your family, the very best of 2014.
Well, thank you, Rob. It's really a pleasure to be here.
I have to ask you, what's it like being married to a psychic?
Well, it's kind of like a reality roller coaster.
Oh, boy.
Particularly if you started out as a psychic, because when I first met him, I really didn't take psychic ability very seriously. And over the last 20 or so years of marriage, I've learned to change my mind, and it was very grudgingly.
Why
I
grudging?
didn't really want to believe in it.
Why not?
I just didn't believe in things that I didn't feel were scientifically based.
Yeah.
That was just kind of where I was coming from. But there were so many things that occurred over the years that I simply couldn't explain that were remarkable, that at some point I just said, okay, fine, I give in. There's something to this.
When you give in, is it that much easier to see the other side, or what, or how the other side works?
Absolutely. I think that having an awareness is important in anything. And once you're tuned into, things around you, messages and all sorts of things, you suddenly find that the world is a much different place.
What kind of advice does your husband give you? For example, have you ever gone against what he has said, and later on he puts that smile on his face, holds you in his arms, and says, "I told you"?
He's always right. I hate to say it. There's been 2 times in the last 20 years we were married where he said before I walked out the door in the morning, oh, by the way, drive carefully. But I didn't take it seriously because in the morning you're kind of half awake as you're walking out the door anyway. But he generally doesn't say that to me. And both times I ended up in an automobile accident by the end of the day.
You and I have to take a 2-minute commercial break, young lady. Wow. I've never had anyone on the show say their husband is always right. This is a first in 22 years of broadcasting. X-Zone Nation, our special guest this hour is Louisa Oakley Green, and she's the author of Loitering at the Gate to Eternity. We'll be back on the other side of this 2-minute commercial break as we continue live and around the world from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
Low rider, drives a little slower.
Nita Hickok is an expert in exorcisms, psychic warfare, soul healing, angelology, soul retrieval, demonology, energy healing, long-distance healing, astral healing, and much more. Nita is an interfaith minister because she believes all gods and goddesses are valid and that they are part of one divine force that is incomprehensible to us who are incarnated upon this earth. Nita has been doing astral healing, distant healing, spirit release, exorcism, house cleansing and blessings, soul restoring and revival, psychic vampire removal and curse removal, and much more for over 40 years. For more information or to contact Nita Hickok, visit her website at www.astralhealer.com. That's www.astralhealer.com.
Do you think you have energy problems in your home? Do you feel better when you're away than when you're home? Joey Korn is a global leader in the world of dowsing who specializes in personal energy clearing and space clearing. He can help you create an ideal energy environment in your home no matter where you live in the world. Learn about his remote spiritual house cleaning services and much more at www.dowsers.com. You can get Joey's book, Dowsing, A Path to Enlightenment, as well as other dowsing books and tools, Kabbalah books, and Walter Russell books. Joey's work is really amazing. Go to dowsers.com right now. That's DOWSERS.com or call 1-877-DOWSING. That's 1-877-369-7464.
Drumming my pain with his fingers, singing my life with his words, killing me softly with his song, killing me softly with his song, telling my whole life with his words, killing me softly with his song. I heard he sang
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. My name is Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My guest this hour is Louisa Oakley Green, and she's the author of Loitering at the Gate to Eternity. Her website is www.psychicbystander.com. Now, Louisa, I understand that your book recounts more than 100 true paranormal stories from everyday people, but you're not psychic. Now, most of your current writing is scientifically based, and all right, I'm sure you get this question all the time. What ever inspired you to write your book, which is non-scientific?
Yeah, I definitely stepped out of my comfort zone writing this. Most people, I think, when they write a book, plan to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. This kind of happened to me. I just woke up one morning and had this feeling that I should write down my husband's experiences from the last 40 years, and I thought, well, for the family. And then it occurred to me that since about half of his family is psychic, I really ought to interview them as well so that it's a real, complete record for the family. And I started telling my friends about it, and they said, oh, well, I've had psychic experiences, and then they started sending people to me that they knew who had them. So I started taking down all of their experiences, and I was going to only do the experiences of everyday people, not anyone professional, but I was contacted or put in contact with 4 professional psychics who wanted to be in the book. So I have no idea why. And when I was finished, I had a book. And I was pretty surprised, but I thought, well, heck, I'll send it in.
Can you share some of the stories that you were given from, let's start with the everyday people.
Okay. I think one story that's very interesting, and I'll just retell it.
Sure.
I'm not going to read it. Is from a woman who's a middle school teacher. Her name is Denise, and she's very, very psychic. She, when she was a child, used to hear choruses of voices when she was in bed at night, and she couldn't understand what any of them were saying because they were all trying to talk at once.
Mm-hmm.
And that frightened her, but her grandmother told her not to be afraid. It was a gift. Her grandmother was also psychic. And coincidentally, she lived across the street from a graveyard all the years she was growing up.
Ooh.
And she used to hang out in that graveyard a lot. She'd sit up in the trees and watch people get buried, and she would talk to the people who were there. In fact, there was a little girl who died in a fire, and she used to play hide-and-go-seek with her in the graveyard all the time. And when she grew up, Denise decided to do a little research on that graveyard. And what she found, and this is kind of interesting because the little girl used to always complain to her that she missed her mother, which doesn't sound like an unusual thing. But she found out later as an adult that there was a family buried there, a father, 6 children, and a grandmother, and everyone had died in a fire except the mother.
Oh, my gosh.
And I thought that was kind of an interesting story. And beyond that, what's interesting is that while she's not allowed to talk about it openly, because she would lose her job, she's a teacher.
Yes.
She does help her students. She gets precognitive dreams where you are told something of the future.
Right.
And so she knows when she has a student who's contemplating suicide, and she will call them to her office and try to intervene. And she's had a lot of success, and one girl in particular who was going to take her life, she got her counseling, and she's doing really well now. So she's the type of teacher we really want to have in our school systems.
Exactly. And it's pretty bad when people who have a gift, now I'm not saying all psychics are gifted or all people have these premonitions that they're all playing with a full deck, but people with a proven track record, like this teacher, I think it's a shame that they have to hide in fear of retribution for the help that they're giving people.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny, they're hiding from 2 different groups. One group is people who are scientifically based, who think that she's a nut. And the other group are people who are very religious and feel that she's in league with the devil, both of which I don't think are true.
Yes.
But you find yourself in between 2 groups that normally wouldn't like each other.
Yes, isn't that always the way? Your husband is psychic, and I believe you said that members of his family were also psychic. So is being psychic a family trait? Is it passed down from generation to generation to generation?
Yeah, actually, I did some research when I wrote this book because I wanted also, in addition to having the 100 stories in the book, to give information on what's been done scientifically to research psychic ability. And one book I read was by Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell. She's a neuropsychiatrist who taught at Harvard Medical School. And her book was about the scientific basis for psychic phenomenon. And what she found in her observations were that psychic ability, really, really gifted psychic ability, is obtained in one of two ways. One is that it's inherited. It's very common for it to be inherited. And almost everyone who I interviewed who was extremely psychic came from a long line of them. Another way that you can become a very gifted psychic, and this is kind of interesting because one of the things is through trauma. And one of the things that Diane Hennessy Powell pointed out was that the brain and the nervous system are essentially an antenna. And in people who are psychic, they have more finely tuned antennas so that they can read energy that most of us can't. And the examples that I have of people who became psychic through trauma, in other words, that antenna was adjusted through the trauma, were George Anderson, who's a psychic medium in the Long Island area. When he was 6 years old, he had the chicken pox, and he developed brain swelling, and his parents were told that he wasn't going to survive. Well, somehow, by some miracle, he did survive, and when he became well, from that point on, he could see dead people, which is interesting. That antenna had been adjusted. There's a famous psychic in the Netherlands, Peter Herkos, and he was just working one day on a ladder, fell off, hit his head, and from that point on, he was psychic. A third example I like to give is someone who worked for the U.S. Intelligence Remote Viewing Program for more than 10 years, Joseph McMoneagle, and he became psychic after a near-death experience.
How do we explain things like Sylvia Brown, who I think was rather... let's call a spade a spade. I think she had as much psychic ability as my dog had, but she certainly knew how to market herself well. You know, how can people say they're psychic, book dates and appointments into April and May, and die way before that? Doesn't that just prove that they weren't psychic at all?
Well, I don't know about her. I'm not really all that familiar with her. I can say this. No one in my husband's family, including my husband, do psychic readings for a living. They all have jobs.
Right.
Like they're just regular people. And I don't necessarily look down on someone who does it for a living because I've met some psychics who are remarkable. But I have this feeling about psychics predicting the future, and this is my feeling about it. There are 7 billion people in this world.
Yep.
And everything that every person thinks, says, and does creates the future, and we all have free will. So a psychic may read a future, but it may not be the one that comes to pass. So there's no point in trying to get a future reading from a psychic. That's not what you should go to a psychic for if you choose to go to one.
What should you go to a psychic for? That's a good point.
To get more insights in what's going on in your life now, just as you would go to a therapist. It's that kind of thing. They can really tell you a lot of very valuable things about things that are going on now, as opposed or things in the past. But they're not very good at predicting the future because there are so many possible futures that I don't think anybody can really predict the future.
Yeah, you know, we did a little bit of a survey here, and these are the predictions that were not made by the world's leading psychics. The surprising resignation of Pope Benedict the 16th, the meteor which exploded over Russia, the Boston Marathon bombings, Typhoon Yolanda, William and Kate's baby was a boy, and they all said a girl, so that was pretty funny. The Bronx train derailment, Rob Ford over here in Canada, his crack cocaine scandal, the recovery of Amanda Barry, and a number of high-profile deaths that not one psychic predicted. We're talking about Ed Koch, Margaret Thatcher, Roger Ebert, Tom Clancy, Lou Reed, James Gandolfini, and the list goes on. And yet, here's something that really threw us, is that there are almost 80,000 psychics that register or have some sort of business awareness, whether it's on the internet or whether it's through a publication. We're talking about an industry that is, what is it, $2 billion and growing.
Well, there's something that I think is very important for people to know. There's this feeling that, psychics know everything, and there's a lot of jokes about that, too. But the fact of the matter is that psychics don't know anything. They're nothing more than spiritual postmasters. If they get a message, they can deliver it. If they don't get a message, they can't deliver it. So they may seem like they know a lot because someone's feeding them a message and they're relating it to you, but they don't really know anything. They just are able to take whatever they're told and pass it on. So if nobody was told about a train wreck or a bombing because, there might be some reason why we're not meant to know it ahead of time, then nobody will be predicting it.
I remember after the tragedy of 9/11, all these psychics came forward and said, I knew that was going to happen. Well, and I'd say, well, if you knew it was going to happen, why didn't you see it? Well, because
it's always easy to say that afterwards, isn't it?
Exactly. Hindsight is 20/20. Please stand by, Louisa. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. X-Zone Nation, a most intelligent conversation with a very fine lady. Her name is Louisa Oakley Green. Her website is www.psychicbystander.com. And she is the author of Loitering at the Gate to Eternity. And we'll talk more with our guest who is, or was a skeptic, who is now married to a psychic who's no longer a skeptic. More about this fascinating story on the other side of the news as we continue from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. I'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't you dare go away.
What if someone told you you could live to be 120? Would you believe him? What if he told you the Bible guaranteed it? All you needed to do was follow his rules and buy his products. Would you do it? What if you invested 20 years of your life in him? What if he tested his substances on your child? What if your child became brain damaged as a result? Meet Dr. Tyler Belknap, a fast-talking Texas admin turned health guru. At the helm of a vast health food and supplement empire, he has established himself as the authority on nutrition and longevity. But what his followers don't know is that his products are laced with bizarre psychoactive substances from genetically modified plants developed in his very own secret lab. No wonder his customers can't stop using them. Tyler Belknap will stop at nothing to keep his edge in the market, even if it means experimenting on children. Chasing 120, a story of food, faith, fraud, and the pursuit of longevity, a novel from the pen of political cartoonist Monty Wolverton, is an easy and entertaining read full of rich characters and intrigue. It hits home in a world filled with all kind of hucksterism and offers a glimpse of what can happen when GMO technology falls into the wrong hands. Chasing 120 by Monty Wolverton. Get your copy today at www.ptm.org/120 or on Amazon.com. Manifestation is driven by imagination, intent, and passion. In our culture, all three have been distorted and disabled by modern media and exploitation. Re-engage your imagination and your passion by entering into the world of paranormal romance. Kahir O'Donnell takes her readers on an exciting journey into the endless possibilities of loving, passionate, and mutually respectful male-female relationship. Her latest book, The Long Dark Night, features special ops adventure, a daring rescue, a psychic woman from the stars, and a special agent that will die to protect her. The Long Dark Night by Kahira O'Donnell is now available at kahiraodonnell.com or amazon.com.
This is the X-Zone Radio TV show with Rob McConnell on the X-Zone Broadcast Network and our worldwide family of broadcast affiliates. If you have a question for Rob McConnell or his guest, or if you've had a paranormal experience, call toll-free 1-800-610-7035 extension 0 or email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, our one address is X-Zone Radio TV.
Welcome back, everyone. Speaking about the rock and roll heaven, I'd just like to pass on two sad notes that we received over the last couple of days here at the X-Zone. Our good friend Dr. Patrick Heron, who wrote continuously on the Nephilim, the Antichrist in Dublin, Ireland, passed away. And also Lloyd Pye passed away, and Lloyd was known worldwide for his ongoing work in the Star Child Project to show the families of Dr. Patrick Heron and Lloyd Auerbach our deepest condolences, and our love and prayers are with you all. 1-800-610-7035 worldwide. My name is Rob McConnell. Our very special guest this hour is Louisa Oakley Green. Now, she's the author of Loitering at the Gate to Eternity, and her website is www.psychicbystander.com. With all the television shows that are filling the airwaves these days on the paranormal, you've got the Long Island medium to ghost hunters. How is this affecting the paranormal? Are people taking it more seriously now, or do you think that people are saying, what a bunch of woo-woos?
Well, that's an interesting question, because one of the things that I was interested in when I was researching my book was, what do people believe? What do they believe now, and what did they believe before all of these television shows? And I found a survey from the early 1970s, before any of these type of shows were on, even before Out on a Limb from Shirley MacLaine was published. And it was conducted by a sociologist, and he also happened to be a priest, Andrew M. Greeley, and he was the director of the Center for the Study of American Pluralism, it was a national opinion research center. They actually did something on all belief systems, and just at the last minute they said, let's throw in a couple of questions on psychic ability. We probably won't get any answers, but let's throw them in anyway. They had 1,500 respondents, and one of the things that really surprised them was that they got a lot of response. Nearly 60% of the people who answered had experienced déjà vu. That's familiarity with a place where they'd never been. Nearly 60% had experienced extrasensory perception, being in touch with someone far away. And this is kind of the thing that really surprised me. More than 1 in 4 felt that they had been in contact with a loved one who had died. And that's in the 1970s, before any of these programs, and that's a lot of people. They had 2 conclusions from this study. One was paranormal is normal, and they were very shocked to say that. And the other was they found, because they did a whole broad spectrum of beliefs, that psychics were less likely to be racist and had greater confidence in their spiritual beliefs than those who were not psychic, who had never had psychic experiences. So I thought that's interesting. Now, fast forward to the 2000s.
Okay.
And Gallup did a poll with a much larger group of people than the original 1,500, and they found that 73% of people have experienced and or believe in the paranormal in their lives. That's a lot. And Baylor University did a more scientific study where they made sure that they were not just interviewing people who were interested in paranormal. They took a broad section of people who may or may not be interested. And they found 70 to 80% of those who responded believed in the paranormal and maybe had an experience as well personally. That's really, really high.
It certainly is. But when we're looking at the TV shows, like I watch them, and listen, I've had psychics on the show over the past 22 years that have given me psychic predictions, then not one has turned out. Not one. I even had a medium come on the show who was telling me she was getting a message from my sister who had died several years ago. And she was giving me all this information, and then I couldn't help it any longer. I said, you know what? I don't have a sister.
She should have at least done some research, right?
Oh, yeah, you think so. So how do we justify this?
There are a lot of people out there who really aren't that psychic. They may overestimate their ability, or maybe they are not psychic at all and they're, just faking it.
Right.
I don't know. I guess I have a couple of comments on that. One is that I have met people who are quite good at what they do. I got readings from two of the people in my book because I wanted to see how good they were.
Right.
And one of them started reeling off the names of my ancestors, first and last names, and also people from my husband's family who I had to write down because I didn't know them, and they all checked out. And the other one, I met her when she was having a book signing, and I said, hey, would you mind just doing like a spur-of-the-moment mini reading for me, or is that too nervy? And she said, no, I'll do it. And she said, oh, your father's passed, and his name was Al. And I said, yes, that's true. I mean, I didn't know this woman.
Sure.
And she said, you have his picture, a military picture, on your cell phone and on your desk at work. Is that so? And I said, yeah, I have his World War II picture. So I was quite amazed at that. Another thing I'd like to point out, that there are many organizations around the world that funnel millions of dollars into what they call consciousness research. And that is the scientific name for psychic research. It just sounds better. And you have to wonder, why would academic, military, and governmental agencies do this if there wasn't, a scrap of possibility that there might be something to it? And let me just name a couple of these places. There's the Institute of Noetic Sciences, which was founded in 1973 by Apollo 14 astronaut Edgar Mitchell.
Yep.
So he's no slouch.
Well,
there's the Mind Matter Unification Project in Cambridge University in the United Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab, Princeton University, that was recently merged into the International Consciousness Research Laboratories. Stanford Research Institute, and the granddaddy of all of them, the Rhine Research Center, which was started at Duke University and is now off campus in Durham, North Carolina.
Okay. So what have they been able to prove to actually show the existence of this ability, and what do they attribute it to? Like, it's nice to have all these people with all these titles behind them, but
right.
Where's the beef?
Well, one of the things they did early on at the Rhine Research Center, and this began in the 1930s, was they developed these special cards that have symbols on them.
Yeah, the Zener cards.
Exactly. And they used those to see whether or not someone who felt they were psychic could beat the odds.
Right.
And they found that there were certain people who consistently did beat the odds. So from a scientific standpoint, you could say, okay, there is some proof.
But also going back to the Rhine Institute, the Zener cards were the forefront testing units for extrasensory perception.
Correct.
Okay, so this, I don't put that in the same category as psychic anomalies or psychic abilities.
Oh, see, I consider that all kind of related.
Well, you see,
I think let's talk about what is psychic. There's kind of two areas that I see. One is the ESP clairvoyance area, where you know something from the past, present, or future that you really shouldn't have any way of knowing. The other is psychic mediums, people who communicate with the dead. So those to me are the two different areas, and ESP falls to me into the first area.
All right, tell me about some research that's gone into psychic mediumship.
Psychic mediumship. Well, there's a place in Arizona that's done a lot of testing. I'm sorry to say I don't remember their name, but I remember when Alison Dubois had her program on. She had a program called Medium. She does a lot of work for the police departments, and she helps solve crimes. And they tested her there, and they found that she beat the statistics. And as far as being a psychic medium, she got all her tips for the police department through talking to people who were passed on. And it's pretty much on record there that she solved a lot of crimes.
But what about scientific research? What kind of proof is there? I'm not talking about institutes that work with metaphysics. I'm talking about hardcore science.
I understand what you're saying, and here's my feeling about that. The scientific method was, and that is basically repeatable experiments to show that something is so, a property is so, was made to measure things in the physical world. You really can't measure energy with those things that are, particularly not things that are properties that repeat themselves. The nature of the paranormal is that it isn't predictable, and it's not a physical property.
Okay,
it's not like gravity.
If it's not predictable, why is it so interesting to people? Because if all you can do, if you can't predict anything, the only thing you can actually work with is the present and the past. And everybody knows their present, everybody knows their past. So what is so special about psychic abilities then?
That's kind of interesting. I guess primarily people draw a lot of comfort from knowing that those that they've lost are still around, and that when we die, it's like walking from one room into another. It's not that big a deal. And I have to say that a lot of these things, and this is one of the reasons why I had so many problems over the years, tend to be, if you haven't personally experienced it, there's no reason to believe it. I mean, I'll give you an example from my father's funeral. One of the early things in my marriage that made me realize that maybe I ought to be paying attention to this. And it's very anecdotal, and of course in science, anecdotal is not really taken that seriously, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. When my father died, I helped my mother with the funeral arrangements, and one of the things I did absent-mindedly, because you don't think very well when you're planning your father's funeral, is I called the church where we were raised because I knew that that minister would know my father. What I didn't realize, because in my mind this minister was frozen in time, was that he had retired. He was in his 80s. He hadn't done really anything for years. But when I called, his wife was so thrilled that anybody would want him anywhere because he was sitting around at home that she sent him. So I'm sitting at the funeral. I'm between my mother and my husband in the first row. And the funeral, the minister, we realized, after about 15 minutes, had lost his focus, and he was wandering all over the place. I mean, he wasn't really quite with it. And in a sense, that was a relief because there was a little bit of humor there. But my husband, at one point, leaned over and whispered in my ear, "I see your father standing next to the minister. His arms are crossed, and he's tapping his foot, and he looks very impatient." Now, just having my husband whisper that in my ear would not really prove anything to me. But I didn't have time to talk to anyone that day at the funeral. You just meet so many people that you're just not having conversations with them. Somebody called me a week later who my husband and I hadn't had a chance to speak to. It was my brother-in-law. And he said, "Louisa, I didn't want to say anything the day of the funeral because I didn't want to upset you, but I want you to know that while the minister was talking, I saw your father standing next to him, tapping his foot with his arms crossed, looking very impatient." Now, these people hadn't spoken to each other, and to hear something that exact from two different people who were there was something that I had to really take seriously. That's the type of anecdotal thing that, you know, can personally prove it to you, but nobody else is going to care. So my feeling is when it comes to something like the paranormal, it almost is something that, as an individual, it has to be proven to you. It's just not something that's scientific.
If the paranormal is so prevalent as some of these polls like to say it is, then how come more people don't accept it? How come there are still so many people, the preponderance of society looks at it and says, yeah, right. Then how come more and more people...
Well, and that's exactly why you're not hearing about it, because, for instance, when I was interviewing for my book, these people came to me because they really wanted to talk to somebody. And I interviewed them, and I was very respectful. I'm a journalist, so I didn't editorialize. I just took what they said, and I wrote it down and presented it. And almost all of them said to me, and some of them were like in their 40s and 50s, "You're the first person I've ever talked to about this. It's just a relief. For the first time in my life, I feel validated."
But why were you...
people...
Yeah, go on.
Well, the reason why people are not talking about it is because they're afraid somebody will make fun of them, or in the case of Denise, she was afraid she would lose her job. There's not a lot of acceptance for people. I mean, I think people talk about it within their personal circles.
Right.
But they don't make a big deal out about it. They really pick and choose who they would discuss it with.
But doesn't that work
nuts.
against them? Because if you feel strongly enough about something and you're willing to go up front and say, "This is what I believe in," whether you accept it or not, this is what I believe in, won't people have more respect for you than if you do it behind closed doors?
Not necessarily.
Oh, I don't know about that.
You know, we live in a contentious world these days. It used to be when I was growing up that people had different viewpoints, and they respected each other's viewpoints. They may not agree with them, but they respected them. But today we live in a very contentious world where people, for some reason, if they disagree with someone, start calling them names. And in that atmosphere, how could anyone feel comfortable saying, "This is what I believe in," particularly if they could lose their job or be thought of very poorly by people?
All right, stand by. You and I have to take our final break for this hour. X-Zone Nation, www.psychicbystander.com is Louisa's website. And we'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. Hi, this is Rob McConnell, just letting you know that the X-Chronicles newspaper is now available online at www.xzonebookclub.com. All past editions and current editions of the X-Chronicles newspaper are available for 99 cents. That's www.xzonebookclub.com, and that's 99 cents U.S. per edition. And don't forget, the X-Zone store is now open as well for all of your X-Zone Nation merchandise. www.thexzonestore.com. With each new extreme weather event or terrorist act, it becomes increasingly obvious that we live in uncertain and challenging times. We all buy car insurance. Why not collapse and catastrophe insurance? Matthew Stein, an MIT-trained engineer and green builder, has written 2 outstanding books to help people prepare, plan for, and deal with everything from minor situations lasting a few days to full-on collapse. Matt's first book, When Technology Fails, is a manual for self-reliance, sustainable living, and surviving the long emergency. This massive book covers the gamut from first aid and emergency preparedness to alternative healing, renewable energy, primitive living skills, and 18th century technologies that could be critical to your comfort and survival in a long-lasting crisis. Matt's second book, When Disaster Strikes, is a comprehensive emergency preparedness handbook and survival guide. When Disaster Strikes is an essential item for every family's go bag. Both books are available at all usual sources. There's a wealth of totally free information posted at whentechfails.com, and author-signed copies may be purchased at mattstein.com. That's www.whentechfails.com and www.mattstein.com.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
I was waiting for so long for a miracle to come. Everyone told me to be strong. Hold on and don't shed a tear. Through the darkness and good times, I knew I'd make it through. And the world thought I had it all, but I was waiting for you.
Welcome back, everyone. Louisa Oakley Green is our special guest. She's the author of Loitering at the Gate to Eternity. Her website is www.psychicbystander.com. If someone has a child in our listening audience who says that they see invisible, or they have invisible friends, or they see angels, how should the parent react to those statements?
Well, I would, support their experience. Everyone has to decide how they want to approach it because it's their child and their belief system. I personally would, talk to them about it and let them talk to me about it. If it's real to them, then let it be real. If it's not real, when they get older, they'll discard it anyway.
Should the paranormal and a person's beliefs in the paranormal interfere with their religious philosophies?
I don't think so. I mean, my late mother-in-law was a devout Catholic, but she grew up in a family that had a lot of psychic ability, and she just didn't see any conflict in it.
No way. What would you like to leave our listeners with tonight? What's the final message that you would like readers to get from your book?
Well, I've gotten a lot of letters from people who've read the book, and the type of things they say to me are, hey, you know what, I've experienced all these things myself, and I didn't know what to make of it, and it really helps me to read your book. Now I have, some way to integrate that into my life. And other people have said, I lost somebody who I loved very much, and after I read your book for the first time in my life, I felt at ease. And first of all, I find those type of letters very humbling that somebody would say that. It's nice to be able to help people. I guess the takeaway is that we really don't die. We go on, and the people who love us don't stop looking in on us. They're around us, and they're there to comfort us and to also share in our celebrations.
Is it possible that what we call the paranormal is our own way of dealing with grief? It's a self-preservation mechanism that has nothing to do with anything else but that?
Well, anything's possible. I personally have had so many experiences over the last 20 years that I used to believe that, but I don't anymore. I think there's actually something to it. And I think that, someone shouldn't just gullibly accept everything face value. I think, whatever's going on in your life, it should prove itself to you. I would not recommend somebody just believe everything just because, but I would say that of anything.
I was just wondering, when dealing with the paranormal, if we can actually use the expression "seeing is believing."
Yeah, I would. I would definitely say that. Or if there's someone in your life who you know is sane and you trust, and they have an ability, then seeing is certainly believing as well through them.
Louisa, I want to thank you ever so much for joining us. Congratulations on your book, Loitering at the Gate to Eternity. And Exonation, if you'd like more information on Louisa or how you can get a copy of her book, Loitering at the Gate to Eternity, visit her website at www.psychicbystander.com. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news at 6.5 minutes past the top of the hour as we continue investigating the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology in what I like to call real reality radio here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.